Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. Tonight's video features true horrifying deep woods horror stories. You know that feeling you get when you find yourself out in the middle of absolute nowhere, surrounded by trees, beautiful countryside. Would anyone hear you scream if something happened? Sit back, relax, enjoy. Stay sinful. Story number 1. My cousins live in North Dakota, and I spent the winter break there freshman year in college. We were at a friend's house one night, drinking in her basement with some girls. It was really late, around 3 a.m. I was falling asleep, so I decided to walk home. They live in a desolate area with lots of snow, and it gets very cold, especially at night. But the houses weren't too far apart, and when the moon is out, it seems light. The path we always take is straight behind the house through some wooded areas, then more open land. I was shuffling home through the snow with my head down. I look up and to my left at 10 o'clock. Probably 75 yards away is another figure walking in the opposite direction. I saw him a split second before he saw me. And when he did, he kind of jerked his arms and shoulders up a little, obviously startled from the sight of me, as I was of him. I laughed out loud for some reason, just from shock or something, and gave him a little wave like, "Oh, you startled me. Haha, sorry." He just stood there and stared at me. I thought he was going to say something for a second, and so I was stopped to just look at him. He had a full face ski mask on, and I could tell it was a dude because he was very tall, but he didn't say anything. So for what felt like forever, it's just me and some stranger in a ski mask, looking at each other in the desolate woods, in the middle of winter, at 3 a.m. A huge chill went up my spine and a voice said, "You need to get the fuck out of here, right now." I turned and started walking as fast as I could home. I've never been that scared in my life. I was a little drunk, stoned, and very paranoid. I imagined me walking home from the opposite perspective, and the man is running up from behind with an axe. So I literally just screamed and started sprinting as fast as I could all the way home, thinking that this guy could easily follow my tracks in the snow, and then I'm going to get murdered. Luckily I didn't, but I don't think I'll be visiting those woods again anytime soon. Story number 2. I'm not sure if it counts as another human being because we didn't positively identify anyone, but a few years ago my friends and I were staying in a small cabin. My dad had a cabin on a remote piece of land in the Idaho wilderness. The nearest town was probably 50 miles away, and the nearest active road that wasn't an old logging road was about 2 miles from the cabin. My friend and I had been bullshitting and laughing in the cabin in our bunks, and it was about midnight. We had turned off the lantern and were trying to fall asleep when we heard something that sounded like something had scraped the door. We both lifted our heads up and mumbled a conversation of, "Did you hear something?" "Yeah." Then, in the middle of nowhere in this remote cabin, someone starts knocking on the door. Doesn't say anything. Just knocks. We were both in our 30s, but we were so scared shitless we didn't say anything. We just lay there with our heads up, staring at the door. We didn't go out until it was light again, and there was nothing near the door that would have tapped against it, and no animal tracks. It freaks me out even thinking about it. Story number 3. I camped in Northern California with a couple friends for 3 months straight in 2012. We are talking way out into the wilderness. The whole trip was a great success until we were heading south again. We set up camp a few miles outside a tiny town as it was getting dark. The only things in this town were one long road, a gas station, a post office, and a bar. In the middle of the night, we hear screaming off in the distance. We could discern 3 different voices, but they were far enough away we couldn't quite make out what was being said. All of a sudden we hear a single gunshot, followed by absolute silence. I opened my tent and looked over at my friends who were looking back at me. None of us said a word. We laid back down and tried to sleep. Scariest night of my life. A lot of people wondered if we reported this to the police. What police? You need to understand that in this area, one sheriff patrols 3 counties. That's it. This area of Cali is what Sons of Anarchy was based on. I know that was a TV show and was dramatized, but there is some truth to what goes on in these areas. The sheriff is most likely in the pockets of the drug runners. It is in your best interest to put your head down, mind your own damn business, unless you want to be the next. We were kids with no resources, backpacks and tents, hitchhiking through the Northwest. It would have been so easy to make us disappear next. Story number 4. A friend and I were scoping out an area for hiking because we were both new to the area. It was probably 6 p.m. but pitch black because it was the dead of winter when it gets dark at 4 p.m. We drove down a dead-end dirt road to try to find a trailhead we had heard about. The road is probably 2 to 3 miles long, and we don't see anything on our way down. We get to the dead end and turn around to head back out to the main road. About halfway from the dead end to the main road, we see a man standing at the edge of the road in tattered clothes and covered in dirt carrying a shovel, staring us down. My friend and I both held our breath until we were back in town and asked each other if we saw the same thing. Story number 5. A trail I liked backpacking in an isolated area of Pennsylvania was the setting for this odd encounter. The trail has a short section that goes over someone's cabin's property and continues on the other side of his yard. It's marked with an orange blaze so you can see where to go. Usually it's an empty cabin. I always do some peering inside since it's a pretty secluded spot, probably 4 or 5 miles from a main road. One time I was hiking through, and there was a large man grilling outside with about 15 Bud Light cans on the ground around him. I distinctly remember him saying, "Keep it moving, no food here," which I thought was funny since I didn't say anything about needing food. Fast forward the following year and I decided to take my sister, my wife, and her best friend on a trip that takes us through this very spot. As we are walking up on it, I see the dude is there again, which is odd, since I've hiked the trail 100 times, and this is only twice I've seen him. He's grilling again, beer cans everywhere. I can see him start to give the keep it moving signal till he sees who I'm with. Now, the girls I'm traveling with are attractive, so I'm nervous all of a sudden. He asks us to stay for dinner, says he has plenty of extra food. I tell him no, we're good, just trying to enjoy the trail away from the comforts of home. He gets weirdly pushy about us staying, and I firmly say no thanks, and that we are just passing through. I hear the dude mumble to himself as we continue past the house. This is where things get weird. There is a prominent camping spot not far from this section of the trail, and it's late in my head. I want to keep going because I don't want to camp near this asshole. The consensus is everyone is pretty tired, so we set up camp. I'm nervous the whole time thinking this drunk man knows there are 3 women camping in tents near his cabin. I never get nervous around people I see on the trail because everyone is usually very nice and wonderful to talk to. This guy just felt off to me though. Fast forward to the middle of the night, and sure enough I hear someone on the trail outside the tent. I'm just praying it's a bear at this point, but I hear the dude mumbling to himself and I panic. I hear him now in the camp. He's going through our shit and is pissed drunk. Fuck. Okay, think. I realize I have a blowhorn on my pack I use on the trail to scare animals off. So I unzip the tent and slowly roll out. Dude is fumbling around and it's scary as hell because it's the middle of the darkness in the middle of nowhere. I start to run towards him and blow my air horn repeatedly, and it's loud as shit. Everyone in their tent starts screaming. The dude nearly shits his pants and starts bumbling the fuck out of there. Everyone is so shaken up at this point. We pack up and night hike out of there. Worst experience I've ever had. Story number 5. I was on my wife's family ranch, which is about 1,000 acres. I was scouting deer as it was deer season. I had my rifle slung on my back as I was walking through the woods. As I walk out of the woods onto one of 2 dirt roads into the property, I saw 2 strangers sitting on the back bed of their white pickup truck. They had rifles in their hands. I approached them with a friendly wave. As I approached them, I kept my rifle slung on my back so not to threaten them. I asked them how they were doing and what they were hunting. They said they were doing fine and looking for deer. I then noticed 6 or 7 beer cans on the ground. They asked me the same thing, and I told them that I was good in scouting deer as well. Here comes the hard part. I asked them how they got onto the property. They began to mumble and asked me the same question. I politely told them that my wife's family owns the property. I then told them they should leave. I told them to have a great day and started walking backwards. After about 20 yards, I turn around and start walking very briskly. I heard 1 shot in my direction. I hit the ground behind a bush and another shot rings out. I hear that whiz. I immediately position myself to fire on them. I see one guy packing up his gun into the back bed of the truck. I take aim at his right leg and fire. I get up and start running into the woods. I hear screaming. After 20 minutes, I get back to my Tahoe, call the game warden and the local sheriff. They come out after about 30 minutes and these poachers were gone. I told them all the details and descriptions and said I think I shot one of them in the leg. The next day I get a call from the sheriff saying they had a guy in the local ER with a gunshot wound to the leg. He sent me a picture via text, and it was the guy I shot. He survived and got 4 years in prison because that was his first felony. They never found the other guy. Story number 6. I used to often spend my summers bouldering with my friends by a relatively large forest that was about an hour and a half away from where I used to live. We used to spend some of the nights camping out there just to save some travel costs and time. Anyway, I think this was roughly like the 3rd or 4th time we were out there camping. My friend had left all her climbing gear in her rucksack just outside her tent, or we definitely thought she did anyway. The next morning we found her boots, a few clothes, and all her chalk powder had disappeared. We figured that it could have been completely feasible that she had misplaced it, although we were quite sure that they were next to her tent. We didn't really want to believe that they were stolen. Anyway, we didn't read too much into this and just stupidly said to ourselves that perhaps she had left it by the boulders and some animal took an interest. I know it sounds stupid, but it was very reasonable to us at the time. Anyway, fast forward a year. We're at the same spot as usual, sitting by the tent and chilling after having some food. Mind you, it is pitch black outside, and only the camp area is lit by fire. I go somewhere a bit out of sight for a slash, and what do I see? A dude in a full ghillie suit laying on his stomach, looking right towards our campsite. I stand there frozen as this man clocks that I have seen him, and he just bolts it out of there. I don't know whether the event to the year prior was related to the ghillie guy, but this definitely has stuck to all of us. We haven't been back there since, which is a damn shame. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future videos. Email all of your true scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. My email will be in the description box below as well. Follow me on Instagram @sinfulshorror. Until we meet again, stay sinful.